Norman Morrison was a Baltimore Quaker best known for his act of self-immolation at age 31 to protest United States involvement in the Vietnam War. The Erie, Pennsylvania-born Morrison graduated from the College of Wooster in 1956. He was married and had 2 daughters and a son. On November 2, 1965, Morrison doused himself in kerosene and set himself on fire below Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara's Pentagon office. This may have been in emulation of Buddhist monk Ch. Ngaa copyright C, who burned himself to death in downtown Saigon of then South Vietnam to protest the repression committed by the South Vietnam government. Public response. Filmmaker Errol Morris interviewed Secretary McNamara at length on camera in his documentary film, The Fog of War, in which McNamara says, "Morrison came to the Pentagon, doused himself with gasoline, burned himself to death below my office." His wife issued a very moving statement: "Human beings must stop killing other human beings, and that's a belief that I shared it then, I believe it even more strongly today." McNamara then posits, "How much evil must we do in order to do good? We have certain ideals, certain responsibilities. Recognize that at times you will have to engage in evil, but minimize it." Perhaps the most detailed treatment of Morrison's death appears in The Living and the Dead, Robert McNamara and 5 Lives of a Lost War, by prize-winning author Paul Hendrickson, published in 1997. Morrison took his daughter Emily, then 1 year of age, to the Pentagon, and either set her down or handed her off to someone in the crowd before setting himself ablaze. Morrison's reasons for taking Emily are not entirely known. However, Morrison's wife later recalled, "Whether he thought of it that way or not, I think having Emily with him was a final and great comfort to Norman. He was a powerful symbol of the children we were killing with our bombs and napalm, who didn't have parents to hold them in their arms." In a letter he mailed to his wife, Morrison reassured her of the faith in his act. "Know that I love thee. But I must go to help the children of the priest's village." McNamara described Morrison's death as a tragedy not only for his family but also for me and the country. "It was an outcry against the killing that was destroying the lives of so many Vietnamese and American youth." He was survived by his wife Ann Welsh and 3 children, Ben, Christina and Emily. Supporters portrayed Morrison as devout and sincere in sacrificing himself for a cause greater than himself. In Vietnam, Morrison quickly became a folk hero to some, his name rendered as Mo Riek Son. 5 days after Morrison died, Vietnamese poet Ta Hieu wrote a poem, Emily, My Child, assuming the voice of Morrison addressing his daughter Emily and telling her the reasons for his sacrifice. 1 week after Morrison, Roger Allen Laporte performed a similar act in New York City, in front of the United Nations building. On May 9, 1967, as part of the start to the 1967 Pentagon campaign, demonstrators held a vigil for Morrison, before occupying the Pentagon for 4 days until being removed and arrested. Morrison's widow, Anne, and the couple's 2 daughters visited Vietnam in 1999, where they met with Ta Hieu, the poet who had written the popular poem Emily, My Child. Anne Morrison Welsh recounts the visit and her husband's tragedy in her monograph, Fire of the Heart, Norman Morrison's Legacy in Vietnam and at Home. On his visit to the United States in 2007, President of Vietnam Nguyen Minh Triet visited a site on the Potomac near the place where Morrison immolated himself and read the poem by Ta Hieu to commemorate Morrison. Cultural depictions. Morrison's widow appears, with her young children, in a segment of the French documentary, Far from Vietnam, in which she calmly describes the circumstances of her husband's death and expresses approval of his act. This footage is interspersed with an interview with a Vietnamese expatriate, Anh Nguyen, living in Paris, who describes what Morrison's sacrifice meant to the Vietnamese people. Morrison's immolation is portrayed in the HBO film Path to War, in which he is portrayed by Victor Salzac. Morrison is the subject of a poem by Amy Clampitt called The Dahlia Gardens in her 1983 book The Kingfisher. Legacy. In the Vietnamese city of Anar Micron Ng, a road is named after Norman Morrison in memory of his act against the Vietnam-US conflict. Parallel to it also is a road named after Francis Henry Lousby. North Vietnam named a Hanoi street after him, and issued a postage stamp in his honor. Possession of the stamp was prohibited in the U.S. due to the U.S. embargo against North Vietnam. See also, Alice Yates, Brian Wilson, Florence Beaumont, George Wynne, Jr. List of political self-immolations, Thar Ch. Quay Pound NGAA Copyright C. References. Further reading, Welsh, Anne Morrison and Joyce Holliday. Held in the Light, One Man's Sacrifice for Peace and His Family's Search for Healing, Orbeez. ISBN 978-1-57075-802-7. External links, Profile of Norman Morrison. Leanstuff.com. Access December 11, 2014. Sojourner's interview with Anne Morrison Welsh, Morrison's widow, sojo.net. Access December 11, 2014. BBC interview with Anne Morrison Welsh, Morrison's widow, bbc.co.uk, December 2010, Claus Burnett. Norman Morrison. In Barts, Traugott. Biographische Bibliographisches Kirchenlexikon 30. Nordhausen, Barts. Cols. 1023 € 1024. ISBN 978-3-88309-478-6.